Jesus Christ. Well, Colbert was never really a stand-up, so, I mean, I guess he has that.
No, but I mean...
But he was a comic when the Colbert Report was on. I mean, that was hilarious.
It was really good.
He was great.
Yeah.
He was great. And that show was a great takeoff of a pompous, ridiculous Republican.
Exactly.
I mean, it was really good. And then when you see this, you're like, wait a minute. What are you doing?
What if I told you the king of late night, the guy everyone believes is a comedic genius, isn't just failing to land jokes, but has actively become the very punchline he used to deliver? Forget everything you think you know about Stephen Colbert and his supposedly cutting-edge satire, because what I'm about to reveal will not only change how you see him, but it might just make you question the entire performance art of mainstream media. Can you imagine having your meticulously crafted public image absolutely obliterated by two of the most polarizing yet undeniably authentic voices in media today? Joe Rogan, the podcast titan, and Megyn Kelly, the no-holds-barred journalist. Colbert, who thought he was hosting a comedy show, found himself center stage in a public smackdown, caught in a full-blown identity crisis, all while the internet melted down faster than his show's ratings. Here's what nobody talks about. The late-night jester didn't just stumble, he was willingly led to the gallows by his own smug self-righteousness. By the end of this, you'll see the man, the myth, the late-night legend completely differently. Buckle up, because this is the unvarnished Colbert roast you didn't even know you were craving.
Her appearance on Stephen Colbert last night was next level. He's so gross. So gross. I remember the Stephen Colbert who tried to just make us laugh, who is like kind of fun, and who, while we always knew he was leftist, didn't realize he hated the other half of the country so much.
Stephen Colbert, once upon a time, a celebrated comedic genius, a master of parody with a razor-sharp mind who could perfectly embody a blowhard conservative pundit using satire as a scalpel to dissect the absurdities of power. But here's what most people don't know, or perhaps refuse to acknowledge. That character, the brilliant Stephen Colbert, didn't just evolve. He tragically became the very thing he once so brilliantly parodied. He's now America's favorite late-night lecture, disguised as a comedy show, a nightly sermonizer for an audience that laughs at the echo of its own moral superiority. Picture this, a comedian so utterly convinced of his own intellectual and ethical high ground that he transitions from subtly mocking the self-important to embodying them without an ounce of self-awareness. You know what this tells us? This isn't character development. It's a full-blown regression, cheered on by an echo chamber. It's the ultimate irony, a comedic suicide where the audience is too busy clapping to notice the funeral.
Did you see what happened with Colbert's audience?
No.
CNN is a joke to people in the audience. Watch this.
He knew his attack lines on President Biden, and he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris, 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is.
That's supposed to be a lab line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Colbert's late-night stage, once a vibrant playground of wit and intellectual sparring, has undergone a drastic, frankly tragic transformation. It's no longer a space where genuine political satire thrives. Instead, it has become a dreary pulpit where nuance goes to die a slow, agonizing death, and smugness multiplies faster than inflation. He's like the human embodiment of a LinkedIn inspirational post. You know the kind, devoid of real insight, brimming with performative virtue, perpetually sipping lukewarm Chardonnay, and repeating White House press releases with jazz hands as if it were an act of profound bravery. Can you imagine the intellectual claustrophobia? It's like watching a pre-programmed robot attempt to deliver spontaneous humor. The stakes here are higher than just declining ratings. It's the slow, painful death of what late-night comedy used to represent. An irreverent, sharp-edged mirror held up to power, not a polished, pre-approved endorsement.
It was, but it is so smart. He said Colbert came up and made his name playing a loving portrayal of a sort of useful idiot, a sort of dum-dum on the right who meant well but was, a real idiot. And now he's playing a useful idiot in a very loving portrayal of the left, a real dum-dum who means well but doesn't know anything, only he doesn't realize it this time.
Now, let's talk about Joe Rogan, the guy who records podcasts in room so dimly lit you'd think he's about to summon Cthulhu, yet he's somehow become the unlikely lighthouse of sanity, beaming clarity next to Colbert's runaway train of performative virtue. Think about it, when Joe talks it might be in between sets of kettlebell swings or describing his latest elk hunt, but there's always a question mark at the end of his sentences. He's asking, he's exploring, he's genuinely curious. What's the full story here? Conversely, Colbert talks like the human embodiment of a definitive period. He doesn't want to hear from you. He wants you to hear him. He's not engaging in a conversation. He's delivering a definitive verdict. This isn't just a difference in style. It's a fundamental philosophical divide. One embraces intellectual wrestling. The other delivers prepackaged pronouncements.
Colbert from the show was this genius parody. Now he's just Stephen Colbert.
Right.
That's who he is.
They destroyed the essence
Well,
by giving him something.
the best example of it was when Jon Stewart came on, and Jon Stewart was doing that bit about the lab leak theory, and Colbert is jumping in and stepping all over it.
Right.
And I'd like to see some evidence of that. Like, he's like fucking up the bit. Clearly, Stewart, who's a great comic, is in the middle of a bit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And Colbert's trying to, he's like, you can see the panic in his eyes that this is not going along with the narrative. So he's hamstringing the bit.
Right.
Which is crazy to see.
Yeah, because his whole body is like physically mortified by the idea that he's sending off the wrong signal.
And then there's Megyn Kelly, a woman who has carved out a news career by fearlessly facing off with everything from the Trump administration to the woke mob. She looked at Colbert's act and with that signature incisive gaze declared, "That's not journalism, that's karaoke for Democrats." And she's not wrong, not by a long shot. Look, here's what's really happening. When your biggest political punchline every single night is "Orange Man bad," delivered with the emotional range of a used car salesman struggling to move a lemon, you're not speaking truth to power. You're effectively selling pre-approved merch to a captive audience. You're not challenging anyone. You're confirming biases. Can you imagine being a serious journalist and witnessing this? It's like watching someone claim to be a chef while only serving lukewarm microwave dinners. The stakes? It dilutes actual journalism, blurring the lines between critical inquiry and partisan cheerleading.
There are quite a few billionaires who support you. You are from Northern California, after all, where they grow them in fields out there. Who's your favorite billionaire? Because we all have a favorite billionaire. On three. 1, 2, 3. Oprah. I'm sorry. I claimed Oprah. You can't take her now.
What's happened to him is what happens to virtually every news personality and late night personality and host of popular shows, podcasts, etc., which is they start getting invited to parties with Jennifer Aniston, etc. And they start thinking they're finally one of the cool kids. And then they drink the Kool-Aid. It's amazing to me that he would embarrass himself that way and that they would think it's good politics to get up there being so chummy chum about how close they are with billionaires like Oprah.
Let's take a stroll down the Colbert content landfill, shall we? You'd expect a political satirist, a true comedic anarchist, to skewer all politicians, to lampoon power wherever it resides. But here's what most people don't know. Stephen filters his jokes with the rigidity of a TSA agent at peak travel season. If a joke dares to criticize anyone even slightly to the left of Susan Collins, it doesn't make it past security. Watching his show isn't about fun or challenging thought. It's like sitting through a particularly stern barista scolding you for not knowing your own pronouns fast enough. You're not there for entertainment. You're there to be corrected, to be instructed, all delivered with those unsettling jazz hands. Colbert doesn't tell jokes anymore. He recites political scripture with a meticulously timed laugh track. The man could genuinely turn a crude fart joke into an impassioned plea for campaign donations. You came for comedy, for a laugh, but suddenly you're trapped in a sermon about climate change, income inequality, and why you haven't yet reached peak wokeness. A truly delightful treat for the audience. Meanwhile, Rogan, the supposed meathead with a mic, manages to interview world-renowned scientists, leading doctors, UFC fighters, profound philosophers, seasoned comedians, and, gasp, even people who fundamentally disagree with him, Colbert's version of a bold interview, bringing on Anthony Fauci to receive a standing ovation before the man even utters a single word. The last time Stephen genuinely challenged someone's viewpoint was likely when he politely inquired if their tie was perhaps a shade too purple. It's clear, one format seeks dialogue, the other demands compliance.
A bunch of things rolled up into one, because he's a legitimate Catholic. Like, he's really Catholic.
Yeah.
Despite all the scandals and kid and all the craziness. And then on top of that, he's this character, but now he's not the character anymore.
No.
Now he's like a guy who's not totally playing the character, but the character comes in and out like little shadows.
Yes, it does.
And it's like, what are you? What's your real thoughts on things? Because I know you as Colbert.
Yeah.
I know you from the Colbert Report, this hilarious fake Republican guy.
Joe Rogan consistently runs his show like a pure, unadulterated, curiosity-driven conversation. It's organic, messy, and genuinely unpredictable. Conversely, Colbert runs his like a meticulously rehearsed TED Talk hosted by a smug high school valedictorian who firmly believes that sarcasm is a perfectly adequate substitute for actual, verifiable facts. You can practically hear the internal monologue reverberating through the studio. I am a smart boy. They will clap. They always clap. It's a calculated performance, designed for maximum self-congratulation. And then there's Megyn Kelly, who now unshackled by the constraints of mainstream news, wields the freedom to call out hypocrisy wherever it rears its ugly head. She couldn't help but point out that Colbert is essentially the living, breathing human version of Twitter virtue signaling. He meticulously wraps every single one of his jokes in a thick blanket of moral superiority, almost as if he's terrified his audience might, God forbid, engage in independent thought. She's witnessed White House press briefings that exhibited more skepticism than his most incisive interviews. This is the kind of thing that makes you think, remember when Late Night was actually about challenging power, about comedy that poked and prodded. Now it's morphed into a therapeutic session for urban liberals who desperately need confirmation that they are indeed fundamentally better than their Midwestern cousins. And Colbert, he's the resident therapist, a therapist who abruptly interrupts your session to show you a clip of President Biden eating ice cream, and, with a straight face, calls it profound statesmanship. When Rogan wants to talk about COVID-19, he brings on doctors, scientists, dissenting voices. When Colbert wants to talk about COVID-19, he brings on dancers dressed as syringes. No, seriously, he quite literally turned vaccine promotion into a Broadway number. Nothing screams trust the science, like jazz hands, sequins, and choreographed nasal swabbing. That wasn't satire. It was a fever dream concocted by someone who clearly watched Rent on a particularly potent mushroom trip.
The left-wing New York City audience brought some truth to the matter. Watch.
Trump has kind of been thrown on his heels by this, and he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris. He knew his attack lines on President Biden. He really has struggled with how to go after someone who's 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race. It's kind of been this moment where he has not been able to coalesce around a single attack line.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. No, I know. CNN makes it. I know
that's supposed to be a laugh line.
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Unbelievable. How humiliating and good for that audience. They knew that was a farce.
And the way Colbert worships political power, it's truly unsettling. It's like watching a court jester who has not only forgotten his role, but has actively decided he's the king. This is a man who, during an interview with Vice President Kamala Harris, asked her hard-hitting questions like, "What's your favorite emoji?" Let that sink in. Richard Nixon had fewer softballs lobbed his way at his resignation press conference. But don't you worry, the studio audience roared with laughter because apparently asking questions designed to make politicians comfortable is what passes for groundbreaking satire now. Compare that to Joe Rogan, who once spent 3 grueling hours grilling a scientist about mRNA vaccine efficacy, dissecting complex data points. Meanwhile, Stephen Colbert dedicated 3 precious minutes to a choreographed dance with a guy in a full-body syringe costume. Which one of these individuals, I ask you, is the true court jester, and which one is the grown-up attempting to navigate complex truths? Megyn Kelly, with her sharp intellect and willingness willingness to confront uncomfortable realities brought the receipts. While Colbert was diligently performing ideological theater, she pointed out with searing clarity how genuine journalists were out there, facing vilification and character assassination simply for daring to ask inconvenient questions. Colbert isn't challenging anything remotely significant, except perhaps your dwindling patience. He's not a satirist in any meaningful sense. He's a content creator with a pre-selected choir behind him, and the only gospel he preaches is pre-approved talking points, punctuated by a blaring applause sign. He has even managed to turn the simple act of clapping into a punchline. He utters a sentence, often inconsequential, then pauses, waiting for the audience to erupt in Pavlovian applause, as if cued by some unseen bell. It's not funny, it's not insightful, it's a room full of people robotically clapping for a green light. You could train squirrels to perform that same function if you offered them enough almonds and a steady stream of MSNBC clips.
Well, also with him, it's like that's what brought him to the dance.
Yeah.
The reason why you're there is like, what kind of meetings did they have with him?
Look, what are we even doing here? Colbert's biggest thrill lately, his peak comedic accomplishment, is relentlessly dunking on anyone who dares to politically disagree with him. This sounds brave, right? Until you realize he's performing this act for a live studio audience that already completely unequivocally agrees with every syllable he utters. It's the intellectual equivalent of challenging a lifelong vegetarian to a beef debate at a tofu convention. There's no resistance, no risk, absolutely zero intellectual friction, just smugness served piping hot on a silver platter. And that's not even the crazy part. Meanwhile, Rogan in his dimly lit studio has effortlessly hosted and facilitated genuine conversations between figures as ideologically disparate as Bernie Sanders, Ben Shapiro, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, often all in the same room, prompting genuine dialogue. Why? Because unlike Colbert, he's not terrified that someone might utter something truly unscripted, something that deviates from the approved narrative. That, my friends, is called actual conversation. Colbert's idea of dialogue is a pre-written monologue peppered with decorative, carefully placed interruptions. When Megyn Kelly talks politics, she approaches it with a steel spine and an unyielding readiness to offend absolutely everyone, because truth, in her view, often offends. Colbert, he's like if Wikipedia and Reddit had a baby that could perfect the art of the smirk. He's so profoundly entrenched in his own echo chamber that he could probably shout into a pillow and still receive a standing ovation from his internalized adoring fans. Let's not forget his truly spectacular transformation into a cheerleader for the very institutions he once so fiercely mocked. Remember when he brilliantly skewered government overreach and political hypocrisy? Now he's the guy gently, ever so politely, telling you to shut up, fall in line, and obey, but you know, with a charming wink and a studio band playing you off stage. The only thing funnier than his increasingly anemic jokes is the utterly delusional idea that he still believes he's subversive, still believes he's challenging anything other than your patience. His nightly routine could be distilled into 3 tragically predictable acts: smirk, parrot, clap. He smirks to show you he's in on the joke. On the right side of history, superior. He parrots whatever narrative he knows will land best with his captive audience, carefully avoiding anything that requires genuine thought. And then he claps for himself, vicariously through the audience's pre-programmed applause. That's not comedy, that's performance art designed exclusively for people who genuinely believe NPR is too edgy, too radical for their delicate sensibilities.
My friends, but these people are all friends, like Rachel Maddow and Democratic Party politicians. They're friends.
Have you ever seen a video of Chuck Schumer and Stephen Colbert dancing together?
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
You need to see it.
Do we have time?
You need to see it.
Yeah.
You need to just see them dancing together. and I feel the same way about comedians that you do about journalists. You know, like you can't be friends with those people because there's gonna come a time where you have to talk shit about them.
Even his writers seem to be in on the charade. Half the time, you can practically dissect the jokes, recognizing that they've been clumsily stitched together from 5 disparate tweets and a glaring CNN chyron. The punchlines land with all the graceful precision of a toddler attempting a triple somersault on a trampoline made entirely of smug. Every single segment, every carefully curated bit feels like it was meticulously engineered in a sterile lab lab by a team of graduates who majored in political science and tragically minored in improv comedy. And the smug, oh, the glorious, ever-present, suffocating smug. Colbert doesn't just wear it, he practically douses himself in it like a thick, overpowering, and utterly impossible to wash off cologne. You could literally drop him into a vat of pure, unadulterated humility, and he'd still emerge, dripping wet with that signature infuriating smirk plastered across his face. When Joe Rogan gently roasts something or someone, you feel like you're at a laid-back backyard barbecue with a genuinely curious guy who happens to have strong opinions but isn't afraid to humbly admit he might be wrong, open to correction. When Colbert attempts to roast something, it feels exactly like a vegan potluck where every single person present is performatively pretending that tofu tastes good, and if you dare, just dare, to disagree with this culinary consensus, you are instantly branded a bigot, a pariah. One of these individuals is authentic, messy, and real. The other possesses a teleprompter, a messiah complex, and a painfully obvious agenda. Megyn Kelly, with her surgical precision, can effortlessly slice through ideological fluff, dissecting it with the deftness of a seasoned surgeon. Colbert, on the other hand, just throws glitter at it and with that knowing smirk calls it truth. You don't need a scalpel to cut through Colbert's increasingly transparent act. You just need enough intellectual fortitude to stop clapping long enough to engage in genuine, independent thought. And while Joe and Megyn fearlessly engage in unscripted, unpredictable conversations with guests who might actually challenge their viewpoints, Stephen huddles comfortably in his impeccably lit corner, surrounded by carefully vetted political pets who know precisely how to avoid anything even remotely resembling a real, unscripted moment. His interviews aren't about learning or discovery, they're about ritualistic, pre-approved nodding. It's like watching two identical bobbleheads agree themselves into oblivion.
Here's Stephen Colbert grappling with that news.
Now, if, like me, you're wondering why the Department of Energy is the one making this judgment, it's because that agency oversees a network of U.S. national laboratories, some of which conduct advanced biological research. No. Bad energy department. No biolabs until you finish building your
Colbert's entire show at this point isn't just late-night entertainment. It's a meticulously crafted therapy session tailored exclusively for coastal elites. And he's the unlicensed therapist frantically scribbling self-serving affirmations on a chalkboard that proudly declares, "We're inherently better than them." It's become so utterly predictable that if Stephen were to simply sneeze on stage, his audience would instinctively erupt in rapturous applause, likely commending the sneeze for being vaccinated. Even his supposed takedowns of political enemies are delivered with the precision of a broken clock. Trump, bad. Republicans, worse. Questioning the dominant narrative, absolutely dangerous and morally reprehensible. Meanwhile, he has never, not once, met a Democratic scandal that he couldn't effortlessly ignore with a perfectly timed smirk and an immediate, almost involuntary pivot to, but what about Republicans? His logic, if you can even call it that, has more gaping holes than a tattered fishing net, and yet, somehow, it still manages to miraculously catch a roaring round of applause every single time. Joe Rogan, with his sprawling podcast empire and wonderfully unhinged, mushroom-fueled tangents, might not be everyone's particular cup of tea, but here's the undeniable truth. He actively invites dissent, welcomes it, embraces it. Colbert, on the other hand, meticulously invites backup singers, a pre-selected choir of agreement. One of them is fearlessly having genuine, often messy conversations. The other is singing a self-congratulatory solo to himself in the mirror. Megyn Kelly, love her or viscerally hate her, challenges absolutely everyone, from presidents to pundits. Colbert challenges his lighting technician more rigorously than he ever challenges any actual idea. Watching him discuss politics is akin to watching someone read a BuzzFeed listicle with the fervent conviction of a fire and brimstone preacher. There's more depth in a kiddie pool filled with lukewarm sentimentality. And let's be brutally honest, Colbert's current brand of satire is the kind you reluctantly order on Etsy. Mass-produced, ethically sourced, and entirely tragically devoid of any genuine edge. He's like an iPad for your brain, sleek, smooth, utterly incapable of processing anything remotely uncomfortable, anything that might actually challenge your ingrained worldview.
I mean, right? There's no, I miss the apology for all the misleading he did.
I mean, that's the dedication to dogma. It's a religion for them. They can't give up the fact that they lied to people. They didn't let the truth get out. They silenced and harassed people who tried to talk about the truth. They just can't cope with that.
Stephen Colbert.
The uncomfortable truth is, he used to be genuinely funny. He had that razor-sharp wit, that brilliant comedic timing. Now he's just loud. Loud in that very specific grating way that people become when they are perpetually surrounded by far too many yes men and woefully not enough honest, uncomfortable feedback. And no matter how many obligatory applause breaks he meticulously scripts into his agonizingly long monologues, no matter how many fake, forced laughs he manages to draw with punchlines that have tragically doubled as thinly veiled political campaign slogans, he will never, ever be the true voice of truth. He is merely the jester who somewhere along the winding path forgot his fundamental purpose was to boldly poke the king, not to slavishly lick his boots. So here we are, at the bitter end. Rogan and Kelly armed with microphones, undeniable integrity, and a willingness to court controversy. And Colbert clutching his smirk, flanked by a studio band, and guided by a moral compass that points whichever direction the DNC tells it to. One is a podcasting phenomenon, the other a seasoned journalist, and the third is a walking, talking, utterly predictable Huffington Post article with visible cue cards. God help us all if they ever, for even a moment, let Stephen Colbert near a real, unscripted debate. But then again, why on earth would they? He already possesses all the answers. Just ask his reflection in the mirror, or his perpetually clapping audience, or his dutiful writers, or perhaps the ghost of satire quietly weeping backstage. Colbert's charm offensive, if you can even call it that, is like watching a robot clumsily programmed to mimic empathy. Awkward, forced, and profoundly, utterly hollow. His wit has devolved into a recycled meme, served lukewarm with an extra large side of that signature smugness. Every single one of his jokes lands with the unwelcome thud of a lecture from your least funny uncle, the one who still genuinely believes dad jokes represent the peak of comedic genius. While Joe Rogan fearlessly digs deep, challenges his guests, and dares to explore messy, uncomfortable truths, Colbert tiptoes through scripted punchlines, terrified of offending anyone but the ghost of Donald Trump. Megyn Kelly's sharp, incisive edges effortlessly cut through his polished, carefully constructed facade, exposing a performer clinging desperately to a manufactured relevance. At this point, Colbert isn't merely a late-night host. He's a chilling cautionary tale, a living, breathing testament to what happens when satire, through its own misguided self-importance, tragically becomes the satire of itself.